Okay, so let's get back. This is just part 2 of doing the CRUD actions on users. So if you remember from last time, what we had gotten done was we can go to our users page, and that gives us our list of users. We can go to a specific user to show a user, to show an individual user. We can also go to a new page to grab the form, and then from here we can type in our fields and go ahead and create a new user. So if we're looking at from this table and our basic CRUD actions with Rails and MVC, we've done our get to users, that gives us our list. We've done our get to user/new, that gives us our new form. And then once we hit the submit button or the add button, that does the post request to /users, and that actually saves it to the database. And then we do a get request to user/ID, and that's going to give us back the HTML to give us back a specific user. So we have 3 more we need to do. We need to do a get request to users/ID to edit. Now, kind of like we did with creating a user, we first need to get back the form so the client can update the form, and then when they hit submit, then we actually need to update it to the database. So it's a 2-step process for updating a user. So let's go ahead and get started with that. So a couple things. When we look at this path, we're going to want to grab the ID of the user and then edit. So I'm going to make sure I'm using the ID of a user I know exists. Something I might want to do for that is when I loop over my users in my users.js, maybe I just want to, display their ID. So that way I know what users I have. So if I refresh, because our IDs can change, you might not remember it. So I know I have a user with ID 3. So I know I want to go to users ID 3/edit, do a get request. This should return back my edit form. But we're getting our route error. So this is a 404 error. It means we don't have that route matched. So let's go ahead and just kind of follow our steps we've been doing. Almost copy this one. This one's going to be really close. It's going to be a get to users ID and then edit. And that takes me to my edit form, or my edit method. So let's go to our users controller next. And let's go ahead and define our edit. Now, something that is different with our edit and our new. When we create a new user, there should be no default values within our form. But when we update a user, we should have those values pre-populated in the form. So let me show you what I mean by that. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to take this new users. Actually, I accidentally added this. That shouldn't be there. I'm going to create a new file. Sorry, I want to do it right here. My JavaScript components. I'm going to do a new file, edit user.js, and this is going to be my edit form. And I'm just actually for now I'm just going to copy what I have in my new user, and I'm just going to paste that inside of here, and just rename this to edit user and edit user. Let's just get this this rendering. There's definitely going to be some things we need to change, but let's get this rendering. So let's go back to my users controller. And so for my render component in my edit, I'm going to render the edit user. So now let's just hit refresh. See if this is rendering that component. Getting an error. All right. So if I get this render component, I need to go look at probably my edit user. And yes, that's probably where the error is coming from. And right here I can see I spelled edit user incorrectly. Sweet. So I have my form, but this form should have the values of user 3 pre-populated in here, right? Because if I look at ID 3, that's John. And you know, I should see John and test@test.com pre-populated in there. Okay, so let's do that. Let's come into our users controller, and I'm going to do what I did in my show method. So I'm first going to find my user from the params ID, and we should have the ID because when I type in that path, I give it the ID. So users3 edit, there's the params ID right there. So I should be able to find that user. And then I'm going to pass that user just as I would with any other component. I'm going to do that with props, user. So now my edit form is getting a user prop. So I can go ahead and add props here. And now I can do just a default value inside of my input, which is just an HTML attribute. And then I can interpolate, or I can use JavaScript to get my props.user.name here. And then for my email, I can do props.user.email. So let's test this one out. So if I go to users3 edit, refresh that, now I have John and John's email. If I change the ID, go to 2, now I have the user 2. So that's working. Still quite not there yet though, because if I do this, I have this action set up to be a post request. Well, the action for to update is there's both patch and put. We're just going to use put for now. We want to do a put request, or we're going to use both of these, but we're going to do a patch and put to users ID, and then that's going to take us to an update method. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually interpolate for the action right here, because I actually need to, the ID is going to be dynamic. So I'm going to do props.user.id. That's how I get the ID there. I need to get it from my props, my user.id, but then I'm going to match that route where I grab the users and then the ID. Now you would think you could just do like a put or patch here, but this is a little weird HTML thing. I keep that as a post. And what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to do what's called a hidden input. So the user's not going to see this, or the client's not going to see this. But what this is going to do is this is going to switch it from a post method to a patch, which will do the update. So this is just something you kind of need to remember to do. Then I say patch. So then that's how I get the patch request with the route. And that's what we're kind of looking for. We're either looking for a patch or a put to the user/ID. And so that's what's going to get triggered when they hit the, and I should maybe even switch this to like update or something, so the button's a little more semantically correct. Okay, so let's go back here. I refresh. I want to get these changes. So that says update. And then I can do user 2. Now that input type, the hidden one, I don't see it, but it is there. I mean, I can inspect the element, look at my form. It's right there. And then I can do like, let's do user 2 changed. And then I hit update. Sweet, so now we're getting an error. No route matches patch users 2. Cool. That's the error we were looking for because we haven't defined that. So let's just go ahead and do it through our patch users /ID. And that should take me to my users update method. And I could also go ahead while I'm here, define a put. We're not going to talk about the difference right now, but I'll just have both of those there. So now those routes are defined. And so, well, I don't have this update method defined. So let's go to my users controller. Let's do a def update. Let's go ahead and put a binding.pry here. So I'm going to go back to my form. User change. Let's hit update. Let's see here. I'm going to close out of here. Uninitialized constant user. So I spelled this again wrong in my routes. Or wait, did I use users right there? So I can't find that users controller because I spelled user wrong. Let's go ahead. 3rd time's a charm. Sweet. So now this is spinning. I'm stuck in my pry. So now I can kind of inspect params. So some other things I can do is so I want to grab my user. So I actually need to find my user, user.find. Well, we have the params again. So there's a couple things I'm going to want to do in my method. I'm going to want to find the user. Spell that right. Params. Sweet. So I sort that into a user variable. And then I'm going to want to try to do user. I'm going to use this update method. And then I'm going to reuse my sanitizer, user params. It's just going to check to make sure I have my user, which I do, and then I have that name and email key. So if I do that, notice that returns true. I can see some SQL going on, and then if I type my user now, that's been actually updated to the user changed. So I can kind of exit out of my pry because I kind of figured out how to do that. I don't have to do this in pry, but that pry tool can be a really useful tool in trying to figure some of this stuff out. So I'm going to go back to my users controller. So what did I do here? I did my user equals users.find. And then once again, we're going to do this if user, kind of like we did in our create, but I'm going to call this user.update. Pass it my user params. Do an else. And get rid of my pry. I'm just going to throw this to do handle invalid input here. We're not worried about that right now. And similar, what I could do here is I could go back to my user's path once we update a user. So it's kind of similar to my create method, but instead of creating a new user and then saving it, I find the user in my database and then I update it. And then we can kind of choose what we want to do. This is kind of an arbitrary choice just to go back to that user's page. So let's go ahead and now try this. User changed again. Let's update. And now I can see that change has been made to my database. And one way you know it's been saved to your database is by doing a reload. If you reload it, that's doing a reload to my users. That's going to go to my database. Grab that. So I know that's being updated and saved to my database. So there's the update method. So we need one more method. If we look at this, we've done our get and our update. So those are done. So we just have our delete left. But there's one thing I want to do before our delete method, and that's set up some routes, because right now we're having to hard code everything. So let's make this a little cleaner by actually setting up some routes or setting up some links. But first of all, what I'm going to do is in my routes file, I'm going to go ahead and define a root route that's going to take me to users index. So what this is going to say, if someone goes to localhost 3000 and doesn't give me a path, hey, let's go just to our users index method. So I can now go to use localhost 3000, and that takes me here. Sweet. So that's kind of like my default home page. The next thing I want to do is in my users or users.js, let's just go ahead and add some basic styling just to give us some space. So let's just do like 20 margin, 20 pixels. Now when I do styling, notice how I'm using double brackets, and I'm just creating a JavaScript object here. So we'll just keep it simple for now. Just want to kind of make sure I can kind of see where my users are. So if I refresh that, it's not going to look pretty. It just will hopefully give me a little bit of space. Just kind of separate them. Cool. So what I want to do here is, I'm just going to do here in a div, I want to add some links. So I want to do an A tag given an href. So if I want to show a user, I'm going to go to users. Now I'm mapping over my users, and then I have this user object. So then I'm going to grab my user.id. And that should take me to that show method. So let's just do these one at a time. So if I refresh, I now have this show. That goes to users 1. Well, maybe here in my users 1, I want a backlink. So let's make this bigger too. Let's get some more user email. So if I want to go back to my users, I can just go back to slash. Now one way you can kind of look at this is to go to your routes. So if I do a get to slash, and let's refresh this because we actually added one. So localhost 3000 Rails info routes. This will show you all of your defined routes. So if I do a get to slash, that's going to take me to my users index method. If I do a get to slash users, that does the same thing. So you can use this as like a roadmap. And this just kind of relates to this table that we've been talking about. So cool. So now if I refresh this, we have a little more info, and then I have that link that can take me back. So now I can go to my show, and then I can go back to my users. And I don't have to type anything in here. Sweet. So let's go back to my users, and let's do our edit. So I can just copy this. Remember our edit, if I looked at here, I want to get the new form, so that is users/id/edit. So I have my users slash, and then I give it the actual ID of the users, and then I can type in edit. And then then that should take me to that edit page, which gives me the form. So I'll save that, go back here and test that out. And let's give ourselves a little, okay, so let's just test that. Edit user, there's my form. Once again, in my edit user form, I could have a link to go back. Not really caring about how this looks, but it is nice to get that functionality. So we have that more UX, it's easier to navigate. So now I can navigate. So now I can go edit user. Something I might want in my is a link in my users to create a new. So I can do that right up inside of here underneath this header. So this is going to go to users/new. Now I don't want this in my loop because I only want one link for the new. Let me show you what that looks like. So then I have this link, create a new user. That takes me to my new user form. And then in that new user form, you can go ahead and add a link back. Just refresh that back. So now I have full navigation here. I can go to my new form. I can edit a user. I can show a user. Cool. So now the last thing we need to do is just delete. And I'm just going to put a link right here for delete. So let's go back to my users.js. And I think I can do like a at non-breaking space here. Let me just try something at non-breaking space. Just want to create some distance there. If not, I kind of, yeah, no, that doesn't work. Forget how to do this, but there's a way to create some space here, just a simple way, but we'll just leave that as is. It's not the best looking, but let's come in here and do a delete user function. So with delete user, the method is a delete and we go to user/ID. Now by default, all of these A tags, these hrefs, these are doing GET requests. So if you're doing a GET request, you don't need to do anything special. But for our delete, we need to actually tell it, hey, the method for this is going to be equal to delete. So we need to tell that in our link. Okay, so let's try that. We might need an underscore under that delete, I can't remember. But we delete user. And yeah, see, that's not right because that actually takes me to my show page. So that did a GET request. I can probably see that right here in my server. I don't want to do a GET request. I want to do a delete request. So what did I do wrong? Maybe it's data method. Let's try that. Data method delete. So let's go back, let's refresh. Delete user, sweet. Okay, so that's the error I was expecting to see. No route matches delete users 1. Well, we need to define that in our routes. So then we can do our delete /users and then give it the ID. And that can go to our users. I always forget in Ruby if it's destroy or delete. I don't know why I can never remember this. Let's just call it. Actually, I'm pretty sure it's destroy. Let's just do destroy. Okay. So now I'm going to have this destroy method. Actually, let me do something. Let me make sure this is right. Just gonna do something. Yep, it's destroy. Okay. So we're gonna go to this destroy method. And I keep on spelling this user. It's users to our users controller to the destroy method. Okay, so def destroy. So what I want to do here is I want to, once again, we're passing the ID. So I just want to find the user, and then I can also call this, how come I can never remember this? Okay, rels C. So if I want to do it, I'm going to grab a user, because what I want to do is I want to grab a user. So let's just grab the first one. I forget if it's delete or destroy. But I'm using the console just to tell me, just to kind of check. So I did u.delete. And yeah, now if I do user.first, it's user2. So user ID 1, since I did that in my terminal, now notice I did this in my console, but this is actually deleting it from my database. So I deleted the user, my first user, and it's gone. I don't have a user with ID 1 anymore. So deleting something in your console actually deletes it from your database. But what I really wanted to find was the method. So it's actually delete. This is why I just get these so mixed up in my head. Delete and destroy. Okay. So we can find our user, then we delete it, and then let's just, after we delete it, let's just go ahead and redirect to the user's path. So if I refresh now, I click delete user, it deletes from my database. It does another HTTP request to get all the new users, which will have all the new ones with that one removed. So now when I click delete user, it actually deletes the user. So there are all of our CRUD actions. We can create, we can show a user, we can edit a user, and we can delete a user. So those are the standard CRUD actions in Rails. There's some variations on how to do this, but basically this is how we do it. And hopefully after going through that whole process, maybe this table starts to make a little more sense. Like I said, code this out, and then really go through, really have this table almost memorized. Because if you understand this table, you kind of have a good grasp of MVC. Sweet, so that will be it for that. Yeah, this code, once again, I will push this code up to GitHub. Let's do this right now. We can do git add dot, git commit -m, CRUD done, and I can push up to origin master. So I'll put this link up in the description. Cool.